Most challenging years for Kenya's economy, from weak shilling, high interest rates to high cost of living. Despite all these, the world seems confident about Kenya as an investment destination. Terry-Ann Chebet talked to captains of the industry to find out their perspective.
When 2014 came to a close, Kenya started the new year with a brand new beat. The World Bank had predicted that Kenya was to be among the fastest growing economies in Africa, and Bloomberg averred that Kenya was to be the world's third fastest growing economy, just behind China and the Philippines. The Bretton Woods institutions, that's the IMF and the World Bank, cited a stable macroeconomic environment, continued investment in infrastructure, improved business environment, exports and regional integration as the drivers of the economic growth. But as 2015 rolled on, the reality could turn out not to be as rosy as the initial prognosis.
2015 has been a very challenging year, politically, economically, microeconomic environment.
2015 has been a year which has been, in reality, much more positive than the commentators would make it out to have been.
2015 has been tumultuous for Kenya.
Despite the obvious challenges, Kenya has been at the center of the world's attention as global leaders jetted into the country for high-level meetings, the most historic being the visit by U.S. President Barack Obama.
You asked the question, and if you really want to introspect, why will Kenya host the G8 in 2015? Why will the Pope make his first maiden visit to Africa into Kenya? Why will he be sitting up this week looking at the World Trade Organization event? Why would that happen? It's just not because someone somewhere made a choice, because strategically Kenya is being seen as a catalyst for connecting Africa to the world. So whether it's a skill base, whether it is the kind of global connections, we are home to the United Nations. We have been articulating, we listen to Dr. Kitui speaking at UNICTAD, you will hear about Kenyans' positioning on growth and momentum. And so we need to see that as a low-hanging fruit to leapfrog our country's growth and momentum, Terry-Ann.
That was the deepest sign of confidence, perhaps, just when Kenya needed it most. Economists agree that Kenya is quickly emerging as one of Africa's key growth centers with sound economic policies in place for future improvement. But business leaders are concerned with how Kenya is responding to these opportunities.
As a Kenyan, I'm also concerned that we didn't take full advantage. We didn't allow our brand to be completely shaped by those high-profile meetings. In one way or another, we ourselves were our worst enemies. I think our own brand, adding ultimately with the world economic markets, casting aspersions of doubt on us.
We had many of these events. I mean, in many ways, we are an enough center that is a platform. I've always said that Kenya is an epicenter for economic transformation in Africa. But the question is whether we have taken advantage. And I would say it's still early days. We haven't done much.
I think Kenyans were rising. My criticism is not towards the Kenyan citizen. I mean, let me be clear. I have said and continue to say, both in this country and overseas, that I think Kenyans are amongst the most resilient, the most hardworking, the most entrepreneurial, and actually highly educated populace. It's not the people, it's the politicians.
They agree that perhaps politics and electioneering, as Kenya prepares for elections in 2017, started a little too early.
Politics is a curse for the country, and we've actually swept the rank and file into this curse. So when you look, if you come back to corruption for a second, if you look at corrupt MPs, we all know we have corrupt MPs, but how did they get there? And they didn't suddenly become corrupt. They were known to be what they were before they were voted into Parliament. And so as a people, we don't have the right kind of mindset.
We're competent at sort of, getting hype going and portraying it in a positive way. But what we are not good at is having sober debates when things are normal. And everything tends to be politicized. As you've seen, the Eurobond has been politicized. Interest rate issue has been politicized. And so what happens is that the way we're branding ourselves as an economy internationally is that we're very muddled, and that governments and opposition have completely different positions on the same issue. So where is the truth?
That we are not keen about politics. I think it's important to see the debates and the challenges we see as a nation. What I believe, though, is that we must call a fact for what it is. We need to look at where the resources are, look at the projects we're going to be able to be done. I was very excited personally when I go to Mombasa many times on the fly, but I went by road. And the tremendous amount of progress done on the standard gauge railway. Now, not many Kenyans get a chance to drive down Mombasa Road to Mchitonde, to Voi, but in my view, more than half of the project is being done.
Activity on social media has shown that Kenyans are apprehensive about the performance of the economy.
How does it feel like to serve a government that's on the chopping board constantly?
The reason why there is so much chopping is because they are visible projects. If you look at the standard gauge, it is a transformational project for this country and the region at large, and it's very, very visible. You can't deny it. So it is something that you can put on the table for debate.
But even as the domestic squabbles continue, the world hasn't rubbed off Kenya as an attractive investment destination. Economic problems in South Africa following a slowdown in China and a strengthening dollar have created a new space for Kenya in the minds of investors keen on expanding their African footprint.
That was in the UAE. A lot of excitement about the Kenyan brand. You know, technology, the agility. You know, people are very proud about what the country stands for outside. And most of them are actually not Kenyans. I think it's high time to believe that we stand on a good platform. Of course there is noise. One day there's noise about the Eurobond. One day there's noise about something else. No country has been built without having challenges.
It's amazing that the international community seems to have a better view and a greater belief in Kenya. If you look over the last 18 months, about 38 global companies have relocated their offices for Sub-Saharan Africa from South Africa to Nairobi. They must be seeing something to relocate.
We're at a position now, in terms of our economic growth and the sort of global scrutiny that we're getting, to determine how we're going to exploit those opportunities. One of the reasons, of course, that people are coming out of South Africa is because they understand that they can't reach the rest of the continent from South Africa. South Africa is almost a silo in Africa, and sort of the culture, economy, etc. is very different from what you find even here or even the rest of Southern Africa. So I think people have understood that Nairobi will give you a greater sense and a great opportunity to integrate into Pan-African markets.
5 years ago, the Kenya shilling to the South African rand was exchanging at 13 shillings. It's now exchanging at 6 shillings and 40 cents. What does it mean? Our currency have appreciated more than 100% against the rand. But nobody sees that. We see what we want to see.
Kenya also is a natural hub to the region. So if you talk about a cluster of the Horn of Africa, 9 countries, we are an ICT hub, we are a port hub, we are a technology hub, we've got the skill hub today, you know, where there's tourism as well. So people are seeing all these things collaborating in one area. And sometimes maybe they say that we don't believe in ourselves, but it's high time. No country has been built by someone from outside. Every country is built by the willpower of all its citizens.
The World Bank has predicted that buoyed by falling oil prices, Kenya's growth is projected to rise to between 6 to 7% over the next 3 years by 2017, making it one of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa. But some economists seem to disagree.
If you look at our GDP, we've been decelerating in terms of GDP growth for years now. Past 3 to 4 years, I think we've gone down from about 6%, and this year we're hoping to hit 5.5%. We're nowhere near Ethiopia, which is at around 9%, and even in the region, we're the laggards in the region. So I do think we need to be careful as Kenyans when these international bodies make these assertions. What you have to do is go back and look at the reality. We haven't topped 7% in years now.
But can we really compare the economies of Ethiopia and that of Kenya?
We sometimes have the wrong comparisons as Kenyans. I mean, I don't see how we could compare Ethiopia and Kenya in the same profit in terms of growth. This is a low-base economy, which is 1/3 of Kenyan GDP, growing at 10% average for the last 10 years. We are an economy which has grown consistent for 5 years. If you look at our size of our economy, over $50 billion. So you're going to compare apples to, or will you compare Kenya to the US economy? But I think that the opportunity for Kenya growing at 5% is a true catalytic change for the future of our country.
While Kenya was topping just above 5%, the global economy registered a growth of 3.3% in average in 2014. Various major economies and regions, however, reported divergent levels of economic growth.
If you look at the resilience, so let's compare with South Africa. South Africa is growing at 1.6% GDP growth rate. We are still in between 5 and 6%. Well, this is proving one of the most resilient. The attractiveness of hosting these global meetings tells a lot about the way Kenya is perceived and the opportunities and the future of this country.
The growth compared to larger economies in Africa has painted Kenya in good light, but corruption has muddied the image of President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee administration.
Corruption is a spending problem in terms of how funds are used and misallocated. And the real problem with corruption, beyond it being a moral dilemma and a moral problem, is really that it doesn't deliver the development dividends that those funds were designed to deliver. And that's really the fundamental problem.
Kenya's first sovereign bond was a resounding success, at least when it was first issued, a sure sign of confidence in Kenya's economy. But in recent months, that story has begun to change, with accusations and counter-accusations.
Been achieved. No one is talking about that. We're all talking about how we haven't accounted for the Eurobond. And I say, in my view, sitting as the largest financial institutions, we see the numbers through. The numbers have been completely accounted for from day one to the end. My challenge is that we need to believe that Kenya will only be built by us who reside in our country. It's your national reputation, it's your national heritage, it's your belief. And we are not alone, really. We have enough partners.
Government did not have a communication strategy that was clear in terms of how the proceeds from the Eurobond were used. So this gave scope for opposition to come in with allegations that government then countered. And really it's been a story of very, very opaque communication from government, which has fostered a sense of insecurity and really troubling questions around how those proceeds were used.
The government later tried its hand at reputation management, with Treasury, the President and the Deputy President all standing on the defense line.
That was too little too late, because really what happened is that the way the management of the bond had been branded internationally was quite negative. And because it was our first inaugural issuance of a sovereign bond, it was crucial that we managed it meticulously, because that will inform the price of any other future bonds that we float on international markets.
So when I look at the resources or the money raised, from the numbers point of view, Terian, we don't see no gap in the numbers. The numbers, I mean, what the Minister of the National Treasury has spoken about, what the Head of State has spoken about, those numbers tie in.
So is there really a silver lining for the country? Will Kenya make it out unbroken?
The silver lining for us will be that I think there's still patience from global investors, from African investors. They're still interested in us as an economy, interested in using our human capital and our labor, interested in investing in us. And I think the silver lining is that we need now to tap into that goodwill and stop, disappointing investors that really are interested in investing in the Kenyan economy and people.
What we need to do now is to focus on those real projects that are catalysts, that are non-linear in a way, that we are believers in building Kenya. And that Kenya is building for our children. Because we're going to be here, I say this generation is a generation of 100-year generation. Our own children will live to 100 years. So somehow we need to transition a stronger, more robust nation for their children's children. That is the key purpose for every Kenyan. I mean, as a loyal citizen of this country, that's what I will ask every single person to do.
We are riding on a very strong heading of the WTO, the visit of the Pope and Barack Obama. And we are opening the year with the visit of David Cameron of UK. Again, a very sustained momentum of growth. So if agriculture is performing, and hopefully tourism will kick in trade relationships will continue to be strengthened, the way infrastructure 2017 will be seeing the completion of the standard gauge railway line. So 2016, there will be significant investment.
Most of the projects that are major projects for the country are already progressing. So now will give us a good chance of growth. I'm also very excited, actually, I must say this, of our new central bank governor. It's not new anymore. You know, Patrick, as I always call him, has been extremely focused about stabilizing financial markets, building ethics, dealing with the issues about governance in the financial sector. Because that is our problem as an industry. Now, all those areas, we've also opened up an office in Ethiopia and saying, how do we position ourselves to move everyone to a better next year? So if you ask me two things about next year, I think it's a year of dramatic progress for our country. And I know there's a concern around growth. Is it going to be 6? Is it going to be 5.5? I always say that the growth of 5% an economy of our size is a strong growth. Yeah. And especially if it's an inclusive growth across bringing in small enterprises.
The big problem, I think, in 2016 will be the fact that electioneering will start. It actually has already started. And I think that will be very distractive for business and very distractive for investors.
With 2016 just around the corner, a change of mindset for regular Kenyans, a renewed love for the country is what business leaders are asking from Kenyans. And to the country's leaders, a strong hand against corruption, meticulous fiscal management, and a strategy that will support the growing Kenyan brand just for the country to touch its silver lining. Terry Ann Chibet for Events 2015.